Most influential and respected commentators of our time. All right, let's be straight up. Charles Krauthammer is the most influential columnist of our time. His newest book is a personal collection of writings over the course of the last 3 decades. It is his journey from left to right as well, from doctor to writer to thinker and social critic, and ardent conservative advocate, I might add, as well. Syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer, we thank you for being here, and we're pleased to recommend what is a blockbuster bestseller already. Good to have you here. Things that matter.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be with you.
Charles, let me start, if I may, because I don't think that most people know your entire personal story. Obviously, what makes the book so compelling, in part, Walter Mondale, Henry Jackson. I mean, these are. How could you be associated with such people, given your conservative philosophy?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because people.
And you never dreamed I would, right?
People ask me, how do you go from Walter Mondale to Fox News? And the short answer is, I was young once.
Yeah.
Now, the longer answer is that it actually wasn't. I didn't have an epiphany. I didn't wake up one morning, the clouds parted. A shaft of light came down, and the Lord spaketh unto me. It wasn't quite how that worked out. It's quite simple. In my 20s, I was a Democrat. And incidentally, this is a road that has been trod by many, including, of course, Ronald Reagan, who started out as a New Deal Democrat. And what happened is simple. When I was in my 30s, I began my writing career. The evidence on what the Great Society, the war on poverty, which I had believed in my 20s and my teens, the evidence on what its actual empirical effects were began to come in. And I was a physician. I'm open to empirical evidence. And the evidence was absolutely unmistakable. It not only was money wasted, it not only wasn't helping the people it was meant to help, it actually was undermining the communities and the people it was meant to help. And I began to re-examine the premises of this kind of great society liberalism I believed in. And over time, and with the accumulation of evidence, I thought to achieve the same ends, a humane, a decent society that works well and provides for everyone, a small government conservatism is the far more accurate answer for any society. And that's why I changed over years.
And, you know, as I have listened to and read you over the course of many years, you have always had a certain amount of humanitarianism, a humanity in your rationality and your assessment that is not always present in conservative thinkers and advocates. How have you preserved that, and what is your reaction now to an environment that is in Washington, D.C. and around much of the country? It's utterly toxic as between advocates of the left and the right.
I think one thing that people tend not to do anymore is to credit the sincerity and the goodwill of the other side. And in some ways, if you were once a liberal, I do understand the intent of liberalism. I mean, there are some liberals who want to control, you know, the political class, the ones who believe, like with Obamacare, I know what you need. I mean, you may like your plan, but I know it's not a good plan, that kind of thing. And that's a part of liberalism that I really don't like terribly much and isn't very attractive. But there's another side, you know, the RFK liberalism. You go back to the New Deal, the idea of Social Security, that you don't want to have the elderly living in destitution. That was a wonderful idea. But the problem is this: liberals are stuck in a reactionary cycle where they are attached to the institution rather than the idea. When Social Security was created, life expectancy was 62. It is now 80. It was never intended to subsidize the last 17 years of a boomer's life. Yeah. And therefore it has to be adapted. Liberals will not be willing to adapt, and the conservatism I believe in is one that embraces the goals of a decent, humane society that looks after the helpless and the elderly, but isn't afraid to reform and to do it in a way that is market-oriented and rational.
Your thinking, it seems to me, collides with a number of the impulses within the Republican Party, and particularly its establishment. That is, if you will, to put, and I don't mean this in the pejorative, but there are corporatist thinkers and actors within the Republican Party. There are libertarians who seem to have no place in either their their minds or their hearts for, to me, responsible regulation and a role for government. And we have a Republican establishment right now, Mitch McConnell most recently, as you know, calling for the establishment to stand up to the Tea Party. I mean, it was a bizarre statement, and I think perhaps a sign of some considerable trouble to come. Your thoughts?
Well, look, in part, that's why I wrote the book, because I do think there's a conservative philosophy that takes the best from everywhere and that believes in the safety net. It doesn't believe in the entitlement society, which is the liberal and the Obama, so hyper-liberal idea, I would say, and all the government regulation intrusion that we get. But it does believe that we're a decent society, a generous society, and there are solutions which incorporate small government, less regulation, but nonetheless attempt to do things that, say, government wouldn't have done 150 years ago. So I write, there's a column in the book on immigration, where long before it was an electoral issue for Republicans. It's a column I wrote in 2006, where I say, look, I think we ought to legalize the illegals who are here, but to do it only in return for closing the border. If these are the last 11 million who are legalized, the last time we do it, then I think America is humane and generous and will do it. The reason that people are resisting is because they think we're going to get a sham like we did with Reagan, and the border will remain open. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah, and I count two in terms of shams, 1986 as well as then what followed a decade later. Exactly. And it's one of the reasons I support what Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, has come forward with. I think is an intelligent, incremental approach that has the potential to solve a very, very difficult problem, to say the least. Charles, it's great talking with you. I can't compliment you enough or congratulate you too strongly on the book. Things That Matter, we recommend it to you highly. And with our recommendation, Charles, I am sure this book is going to go even higher on the bestseller list.
Congratulations. There's no stopping me now, Lou.
You got it.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you with us. Thank you.